We are talking about Accelerator. This one is directed by David Giancola. It's actually got a pretty good cast here. You have Maxwell Caulfield, who's been a ton of kind of low budget B movies. You've got Sean Young, and heading up cast you've got Sam J. Jones, of course, Flash Gordon, of course, and you've also got a couple of more unknown people. Ryan Wesson plays our main character Dane here. Now, this is kind of an action science fiction movie to a degree, and it focuses on Dane, who is a hapless car thief, or at least part-time car thief, but full-time pizza delivery boy. And he just happens to be stealing a car when this guy gets into it and essentially takes him hostage. Now, this guy is being pursued by some armed goons, and he has got some type of tech with him, and this tech is the Accelerator, which is, for all intents and purposes, a teleportation machine. Now, they're chased in a kind of a thrilling chase. We'll come on to that. Just put a bit in that for a second. And this bloke who's got this technology gives Dane this teleportation device to get out there, and he seemingly blows up in this car. So then Dane is on the run, hapless, pretty much a nobody, being pursued by government agents. He runs into this female shop assistant called Kate, and the pair of them go on the run, trying to outwit various government agents, all the while being pursued by the relentless hitman played by Sam J. Jones. Now, so first of all, let's talk about what works first of all. This movie has it's a contemporary film. It takes place in modern society and everything, but it has a nostalgic feel to it. If you've ever watched kind of like the science fiction movies, the straight to kind of DVD ones that you would have got, I would say in the late 80s and the early 90s, it feels like one of those. Lots of kind of like petrol explosions, lots of goons, you know, being kind of unrealistically out in the open with what they're doing, things like this. Bad guys, you know, doofus kind of leads, all this sort of stuff. It has this kind of unrealistic but kind of fun and nostalgic feel to it. Now, when you watch this movie, to the untrained eye, it actually looks quite high budget in places. There's actually seems to be quite a lot of explosions, car chases, you know, cars getting blown up, things like this, large kind of action set pieces, lots of extras in certain scenes. Put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that. And it is also nice to see some of our favourite genre actors back. I actually quite like Sam J. Jones. He was in a TV show called The Highwayman, which no one ever talks about anymore. It's just kind of like a lorry version of Knight Rider. He was in that, and obviously in Flash Gordon, and obviously Sean Young, of course, from Blade Runner. And as I said, Maxwell Caulfield's been in a whole bunch of you know, low-budget kind of science fiction and action movies. So it's also fun to see him. So I actually quite like the cast, but my favourite actor here was actually one I'm not familiar with, to be honest with you. This guy called John James, who plays kind of like the shady CIA boss. His delivery is so deadpan and such a great Bond-type villain. He is fantastic. I absolutely adored him. The movie also has lots of different locations, so what we're seeing on screen is always kind of changing up, and it is actually a fairly high-octane action thriller to a certain degree, with kind of a science fiction component with the kind of the teleportation device, complete with mad scientists and stuff like that. So, let's talk about what doesn't work. Now, I've mentioned lots of kind of action set pieces to the untrained eye. You'll notice something a little weird here. You'll notice something, this scene looks incredibly cheap compared to this scene, which looks really high budget. And there's a reason for this, I believe. Now, let me go into a little bit more detail. You'll see certain scenes that seem to be filmed in a very innocuous background, like in the desert. But it's obviously green screened. But then we'll have scenes that have lots of kind of stuff going in, again, in a desert, in a kind of a desert environment. Think, why well, certain things look incredibly good and certain things don't. Not only that, you'll see that just the quality of the film looks different in certain scenes compared to others. Now, I've done a little bit of research on this one, and apparently this movie, and I can't confirm this 100%, but it certainly looks like this. The movie looks like it's taken scenes or sequences from existing high-budget movies, including the Bad Boys series, and plonked them in there in the actual movie itself, in this movie, to give it the impression that it is this much higher budgeted, lot more kind of explosive action movie, when in fact the scenes that are clearly made for this movie are the lower budget, lower quality scenes on the kind of like the the green screen. There's actually even a couple of instances where I think things have been superimposed onto existing action scenes. There's an explosion at one point, and then we see our characters, jumping away from the explosion, but it looks like they've been superimposed over it. Now, like I've said, I think for the general audience goer, and if this movie did come out in the 90s, I reckon you could get away with it, in the fact that people wouldn't notice. And some people may still not, and just kind of enjoy it for what is presented on the screen. But the reality is, I think if you are the sort of person that watches movie reviews on a YouTube channel, you're probably a little bit more disconcerting than a lot of people. So I feel that this may be a little bit off-putting, particularly because there's a clear difference in quality in regards to some scenes compared to others. Now, I actually watched all the credits of this movie just to see if they had mentioned other films where they had taken footage from, and they didn't. But having done a little bit more independent research, there are a couple of people who say that this has taken footage, particularly from the Bad Boys franchise, as I say. So, like I've said, some people may not care or may not even notice. I noticed. But it's a weird thing to judge, because I think that's going to go under the radar for a lot of people, and some people may even notice and not care. Because on the surface of it, it still is quite a fun action movie, even though this does look like a little bit of a hodgepodge. And this isn't, don't get me wrong, this isn't anything new. Plenty of films in the past have done this. Roger Corman was famous for doing this, reusing kind of scenes and stuff. Although this is like scenes clearly from higher budgeted movies, so I don't know how they've got away with that, to be brutally honest, if that is what's happened. But anyway, so there is that. Okay, so outside of that, what else maybe doesn't work? I have to say some of the acting here is a little wonky. As I mentioned, there are a couple of characters that I actually quite like. I actually quite like Sean Young's character as well. But there are a couple of smaller characters. The mad scientist guy, and even, to be honest with you, our male lead, I think, acting is a little on the poorer side. And I hate to say it, but even Sam Jones, who I actually, I'm a fan of, but I don't know, he doesn't really seem to be properly engaged in this movie, So he comes across as clearly not taking it seriously, and maybe he shouldn't, because it is kind of a campy kind of spy movie to a certain degree. But his character is very cartoony, I would say, especially when you compare it to kind of the heads of the CIA who are played very well and stuff like that. There are serious quality issues with this movie. However, the green screen, when we do see it, is very noticeable, and it's a little off-putting. Outside of that as well, the plot elements here just seem to be kind of glossed over. The reason why Dane is teleported to Kate's location seems to just, it almost infers that this machine has some type of intelligence, but it's never mentioned again. It's meant to be where you kind of feel safe or something, but he ends up just in this kind of with this person he's never met, because it just happens to be a single female around his age. Seems a little bit, a bit of a stretch, even in this movie's kind of rules. So there's a few things like that where it's just kind of a little bit cheeky because the plot requires it to do certain things at certain times. There's also some really frustrating issues where the bad guys don't shoot the good guys because the plot needs to go forward, when in reality, and it's completely to make it even somewhat realistic, there's no even attempt to try and kill them at certain points. They just kind of stand there. I mean, and at least try and shoot and miss rather than just kind of stand there and let them get away and stuff like that. There's one point where Sam Jones's character creeps up on our two characters who have at this point got this device, and he could have just shot them from behind and got the device, but he doesn't do that. He calmly walks up behind them and then they run away. It's just a little bit too stupid for its own good at times. So overall, I think, can you enjoy this movie? I think it largely depends on, can you kind of look past the fact that this is clearly lifting footage from existing material? Because if you can, I feel that there is an enjoyable film here. And I still enjoyed it, despite that kind of bothering me to a certain degree. Because even though it is obviously lifted from other films, it is integrated relatively well, outside of some really obvious change in kind of film quality. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. It's an enjoyable film, I think, for certainly a B-movie action movie. And then on the surface, it does look quite impressive. Just if you kind of peek behind the curtain there, I think maybe it all comes a little bit undone. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.